Welcome to another episode of Progress, Potential, and Possibilities, discussions with fascinating people designing a better tomorrow for all of us. I'm your host, Ira Pastor.
Welcome, everybody, again to another episode of our show, bringing you another really fascinating guest today involved in creating a better tomorrow. Today, we have the honor of being joined by Dr. Angela Neff, who is the Chief Research and Development Officer of the Reckitt Group, where she is responsible for elevating Reckitt's science capability and their platforms, as well as for driving external partnerships, as well as amplifying the mission of the Reckitt Global Hygiene Institute. Dr. Neff came to Reckitt with over 20 years of diverse senior leadership experience in product and business development roles. Most recently, she spent 10 years at DuPont in various technical and commercial leadership roles, where she led their nutrition and biosciences, global technology and innovation organization. She has a very strong track record of accelerating innovation in areas of food, nutrition, science, biotech. Dr. Neff is a graduate of University of California, Davis, with her PhD in physical chemistry. She's a Six Sigma black belt. And for those that may not be familiar with the company, Reckitt Benckiser is a $13 billion in revenue, 43,000 employee company, multinational consumer goods group, located, headquartered in England, produces health, hygiene, and nutrition products. Reckitt's brands include the indigestion remedy Gaviscon, the baby food brand Mead Johnson, air freshener Air Wick, and other products like Calgon, Clearasil, Durex, Lysol, Enfamil and Nutramigen, which my kids ate a lot of growing up. And when she's not doing all of that, Dr. Neff is also an accomplished author. You can find her book, The Fabulous and Fun World of Chemistry, a science book for girls by girls, on various online outlets. We're honored to have her with us today. Dr. Angela Neff, thank you so much for taking the time on the show today.
Wonderful to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great having you. Angela, as we typically do, I would love to start things off by handing you the floor for a little bit, just to introduce yourself a little bit further. If you could go into a couple things about your background and anything from where you grew up, a little bit of your development of your intellectual interest in not just STEM, but chemistry, of course, and a little bit of the early career journey, things that were going on when you authored papers entitled Using Solvents to Improve the Chemical Shift Differences Between Short-Chain Branch Methanes and Long-Chain Branch Methanes and Polyethylene Copolymers, and other exciting titles like that.
Well, that is so fun. So my pleasure. All right. So I grew up in California, and I think from a very young age expressed all sorts of interest in science. My parents told me, the little stories about, when I got my first red little microscope at age 9, and, I went outside and could collect up anything I could and, looked at it under the microscope. I remember my mom, when she was in nursing school, which was fascinating. So she went back to nursing school after having 4 daughters. And her, textbooks around the house while she was doing her studies. And I'll never forget this. It was a microbiology book, and it was white with blue writing on it. And for whatever reason, I decided I wanted to take a look at it. So I took it back to my bedroom and spent the next weeks, poring over all things microbiology. So yeah, I think from a very early age, just very interested, very curious, throughout just, school, high school, and so forth, definitely had an interest in the sciences. And then when I decided to, go to university, I had actually started my, academic career wanting to be a medical doctor.
Okay.
And as a lot of young budding scientists do, right? And but it was when I had my very first general chemistry class at university, I said, this was for me. I just loved chemistry. I liked biology and all the other, sort of life sciences as well, but chemistry, physics, mathematics, I don't know, it just spoke to me in a really cool way. So I decided to make chemistry my major. I still kind of had the medical school thing, like as maybe the next step of the journey, if you will. But I think my third year of university, I started doing like some teaching assistantships with some of the professors, and ultimately decided to go to graduate school and pursue a PhD in physical chemistry, which I did. Loved every minute of it. It was hard and fun and interesting. So those, many years later, from red microscope in my, childhood bedroom to, physical chemistry PhD. It was, the next step is, what do you do for a job? Where do you go? What do you do? And so I, to the point around the publication, right? And what I was actually doing in graduate, I was a spectroscopist. So I was doing, effectively method development, looking at different reactions utilizing nuclear magnetic resonance. So I was a spectroscopist and analytical training by training. And so I joined the Dow Chemical Company in their analytical sciences group. And it was awesome because I had all this amazing tools available and all these interesting problems to solve. And so spent the next, several years of my career at Dow just honing those skills, as well as product development and how you actually bring new products to market, and learning the other aspects of being an industrial scientist.
Excellent. And then as you, over the years, starting from that base, and you've been involved in, as I mentioned in the intro, innovation when it comes to the food ingredients, the supplements, nutritional science, and so forth. And as that's been going on, there's been sort of this other very interesting transformation happening at the same time, sort of what I'll refer to as sort of the bio transformation that, we've seen this maybe started in the early 90s at some point, where we've seen this wave of sort of biotechnology coming in, sort of partnering up with chemistry, not just for the production of interesting materials that aren't, say, from petroleum stocks, but come from nature. I'm thinking about the DuPont Bungie business that you were involved in running, but also in terms of sustainability and looking at sort of the ways that nature can potentially make things, as well as synthetic systems. Talk a little bit about that transformation of the sort of the research component of this whole life science space that you saw as you proceeded through your career.
Yeah. So I think that these evolutions, if you will, of how we can actually industrialize certain types the sciences is super fascinating. So if I think about like the 20th century was, as you were saying, it was the era of synthetic chemistry, polymers, right? Building materials were never existed before. It was even harnessing the power of natural biopolymers. There's lots of polymers that come from nature that are, you can think spider webs, you can think things that come from algae, all sorts of very interesting, very powerful and functional materials that come from basic biology. And then you enter into this idea of, well, wait a minute, is there a way to harness that biology and drive its directed production through biotechnology? And so, the short answer is it's been a massive revolution in terms of being able to utilize bioreactors to create materials and drug products, really functional type materials by utilizing and harnessing the power of fermentation, and actually being able to tune what these biological processes can do. I spent a lot of my career looking at things like enzymes. Mm-hmm. So enzymes are, nature's little powerhouse, right? Enzymes are important in just about everything we do, from digesting our food to making sure that everything works properly in our own biochemistries, to how we clean our clothes and wash our dishes, right? So the idea of being able to create very tailored enzymes to do exactly what we need them to do in a small little bioreactor, at the beginning of the research stage, to now industrial scale, as big as you can imagine, fermenters that are actually creating very specialized and very tuned enzymes is just as phenomenal. And that's happened in just 30, 40 years.
Yep.
So just the pace, I think also of this biotransformation is way faster than that pace that I referred to in the early 20th century on the industrialization of chemistries, and those kinds of processes. So that pace of play is so fast, and the amount of then invention space that we're actually able to go after is even that much bigger.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So now here you are as role of chief R&D officer of a major consumer, not just consumer health, but consumer packaged good company. There's this mission that RB: protect, heal, nurture, and you have sort of these three baskets: hygiene, health, and nutrition. Can you walk us through just a little bit of sort of, what your day-to-day is like in an organization of this scale specifically, and that's involved in everything from the early stage innovation to commercialization now. And also, I was reading recently, you recently launched this Ignite with Reckitt, which talks more about sort of some of the innovative ways you're looking at innovation in general. And I'm thinking sort of the comparison I come out of the pharma industry, and obviously pharma is a lot different nowadays. We used to do a lot of stuff in-house, but a lot of it's external innovation. If you could talk a little bit about some of that sort of transformation, also about how you've seen things evolve in the consumer packaged goods space with regard to how one does innovation versus maybe how we did it a few decades ago.
Yeah, no, thanks for that question, because it's changing, and it's changing rapidly. So I think, day to day, to maybe just start with what's the day job, right? What do we do all day? So we do cover, global R&D, the function I'm responsible for, we cover the full end-to-end of the product life cycle. So that means we're thinking very early on, what's the next new thing that's going to happen in 10 years, right? And we're experimenting, and we're asking the tough questions, and we're being very curious, and we know that the win rate is very low. Right? This is a really hard part of the process, right? Where is the world going to go in the next 5, 10, 15 years, right? So we have dedicated researchers and scientists that are focused on that aspect of it, so that they actually have that freedom and that creative mind space to be thinking not about what the day-to-day requires in terms of, product X is on the shelf, but it really is around how might we disrupt ourselves? How might we be thinking about, it might not be the product that we have today, but it's the product we're going to have into the future. So that's, a big part of the creative space that we have to bring to our jobs every day. And then, as I said, we go through the whole product life cycle. So if you think about development, partnering with our marketers and our sales teams and our manufacturing teams to bring to life those concepts that we create together, super collaboratively, because it's the only way to do this, in a way that actually puts real products on the shelf. Which, I don't know about you, but when you see things that you've made and you've done and they're available now to consumers, it's such an amazing feeling. And as a scientist, as an engineer, as a medical professional, as a regulatory professional, it's very rewarding to be able to say, I did that. Yep. I made that happen, right? And then if you think about, over the years, these products, they're iconic. Lysol, Dettol, Durex, Air Wick, they have such amazing jobs to be done, if you will, and brand recognition, right? So we have a very significant part of what we do every day, which is really ensuring that these jewels, if you will, that sit in our custody right now, as we're the ones looking at over them, right? That they're delivering against the consumer promise of superiority, that they're making sure that the baby eating that infant formula is getting the best start in life, right? And so we are looking at that full end-to-end cycle in terms of making sure that everything is safe, compliant, keeping up with the, the requirements, the latest trends. And that's super fun, right? Because it's always a question of what's possible, what's next. And I think as you ask the question about how we bring the work that we do in terms of innovation to life, we have to be able to externally collaborate, because there is no way that, dealing with the pace of play, as I said a little bit earlier, right? Things are moving so fast, and being able to be deep in every aspect of science and technology, that's not where we're excellent. So we take these partnership approaches to leverage the power of all of our partners. And then we're all winning, right? So we've got amazing brands, amazing channel access, amazing scaling, if you will, in terms of getting products to many, many, many markets. So when we have these partnerships, our big part of our value proposition is that translation science, right? So maybe there's a new ingredient for infant formula, for example, adding a new health benefit. So being able to partner with those kinds of companies to really bring it to life, and ultimately get to as many countries and markets as we can. And I just fundamentally believe that we need to be humble and we need to be open to the totality of what's out there in order to be able to do our part of the value equation, if you will, which is really enabling access of all of these great products and solutions through our channels and through our company.
It's interesting when I look at the portfolio. You really start at the very beginning of life with the baby. Well, technically with the Durex starts people. We're going to get into that, but so we have the baby formula products throughout life, and then you get to the sort of the healthy aging space, the Move Free, the Nariva, and I thought it was quite interesting because as we think about innovation and a lot what's happening nowadays in other spheres, the Nariva product is not just the product anymore. You have a digital health app. There's a personalization component to it. And I thought this was very interesting because, again, it pointed to hey, Arby's not just having this one product on the shelf, but it comes with all these other sort of a little product ecosystem that allows for personalization. So this product is for me as Ira Pastor, not just for. Talk a little bit about sort of the little ecosystems that you build around these products, if you would, because healthy aging is kind of a hot topic for the show.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really treating the whole condition. That's the idea, right? The idea is that we want to drive real outcomes. Yeah. We don't want to just have bottles on shelves. We don't want to just have liquids in bottles. You see what I mean? We want to drive outcomes for consumers. And so when you think more holistically about that consumer journey, that consumer experience, what's amazing is it gives you way more degrees of freedom to innovate. Yeah. Because now you're thinking, oh, right. So there's a whole field of, like you were saying, apps that help, tune the energy and make sure that, you're keeping fresh and you're keeping mindful of the things that are important for you in this instant, cognition. And that's not a supplement in terms of a pill, right? It's actually a supplement in terms of leading to better outcomes. There's also a big part of that related to education, right? Just enabling our consumers to be more educated about the choices that they have to make the best possible choice for their best possible outcome. So I love Ira. It's like, yeah, it's mine. Our intention as we think about everything we do is always for you, right? And we want to make sure that where personalization and things can become more fruitful, right? That they can actually be more impactful, that we take those steps to do that. And so, I have another interesting example, which is around Gaviscon. So I think you mentioned at the top of our chat today, right? So, it's a very serious daily condition that people have, gastric reflux and indigestion problems and so forth. But we also want to make sure that we're educating consumers on all the options that they may have.
Sure.
So from our medical expertise at the company, we also make sure that we're providing that kind of information has nothing to do with the product. We know
Right.
what our product does in particular, but it's really about, do you know your condition so that you can make the best, well-informed choice, working in partnership with your primary physician as well.
Excellent. Continuing along the theme of innovation, you were part of a discussion group at COP26 at the UN Climate Change Conference in 2021, and the discussion group was gender, science, and innovation. And at this group, you gave a talk on something called inclusive innovation. And I thought this was quite interesting because since then, RB has, there was an announcement about this interesting gender pain gap information he put out there that, hey, my pain may be very different than my wife's pain in the other room, and we have to think about these different experiences differently, whether we're treating pain or other conditions. And then he recently also did this, talking about environment and sustainability, this Mondi Eco Solutions approach to the tablets. Normally we're dealing with all this plastic still, but you come up with a really innovative way to deal with paper in terms of the dishwasher tablets. Just talk a little bit about your time at COP26 and some of these ways that you integrate both inclusive innovation but also sustainability into these research programs.
Yeah, COP26 was so amazing of an experience, right? Just to get this brain trust, and being able to just walk the halls was really amazing. And so I was really fortunate to have this opportunity to lead the panel that you're talking about around gender and sciences and sustainability. And the message that I like to share with people around inclusive innovation is that the challenges that we collectively all have in front of us are big, right? And they're hard. Like we cannot shy away from them. And by being inclusive in our innovative approaches, which what I mean by that too is gender, so men and women. And of course, in the sciences, there's a long-standing differential, if you will, in terms of just the proportionalities, but it's changing. There are more women going into science now. And I think that's a great thing because it's that spirit that we all see things differently. And it's not just gender, but it's also our background. It's also where we come from. It's our own experiences that shape who we are and then shape how we think, right? And shape our knowledge, right? So I'm a physical chemist. I was educated at UC Davis. Okay? That's one element of me. Yeah. But I also grew up in Southern California into a family with 3 sisters and parents that all of me is what makes me who I am, right? And my hope and desire to bring all of that diversity to bear on these big challenges. That's what I mean when I talk about inclusive innovation, that we cannot leave one voice left behind because that might be the voice that has that critical unlock. Right. Or it might be that voice that builds upon that next thought and that next thought and that next thought that actually gets us to a better outcome. So I fully appreciate and recognize that if we don't talk about it and if we don't say it's important, unconscious bias creeps in. Yep. And groupthink happens, or people look at other people in their own mirror. That happens. Mm-hmm. So I like to talk about it. I like to shine a light on it, and for it to be really considered the asset that we need to actually get to better answers. So inclusive innovation is all about the best possible outcomes, utilizing everybody's insight and voice. And I think at COP26, I think what was really fascinating about that too was from a sustainability perspective, from a climate change perspective, I think we all agree now, I think, right, that there is a big job to do. Oh, yeah. And that it also is going to involve behavior changes. Like we all 8 billion of us hanging around the planet now, we can't keep doing what we've been doing. So that spirit of also listening and helping to find solutions where behavior change is hard, right? So that way, the more inclusive you are in your design, the more likely we are to be that we'll be more inclusive in their outcomes. Mm-hmm. And driving those behaviors in different parts of the world and in different parts of people's lives actually comes to pass.
Yep.
We can't just wish our way to, to these significant changes.
Talking about bringing all voices to the table, another area that you've been very active in is really thinking about the next generation. You were part of this One Young World Summit. Here you're hanging out with the UN Secretary General and the head of the WHO, and the focus here was on sort of interesting models to build healthy, sustainable futures. And there was this interesting Fight for Access Accelerator program, I think, that came out of this. Say a few words, because I think this is another really important example. It feeds back to the inclusivity, but again, we got a lot of problems out there. We got to get the next generation focused on them as well. Say a few words about this summit, if you would.
Yeah, 2,000 young people were at this summit, and then even more satellited in and zoomed in, if you will, listening and engaging in these conversations. And I think it's very simple. I think it's our responsibility as a corporate citizen, and I think it is my responsibility as a scientist and a leader to make sure that we are the inspiration and helping guide our future generations. We owe it to them. I don't see this as like a nice to have. I absolutely think this is a responsibility. We owe teaching our experiences. We owe teaching our learnings, good and bad, right? I mean, I've had lots of experiments that didn't go my way, right? And being able to say, but that's how you test. And that's how that's okay, right? And I think, we need to make sure that we're standing up and saying, try, push, be curious,
yep.
Right? To allow that, I get it. And they'll walk through the door, right? And I think this generation, right, this new generation entering the workforce right now, I also see the heaviness. There's a heaviness on these people, right? There's how are we going to do it all? And it's our responsibility to help them say, we can do this. You can do that. We can all be part of this. And I'll tell you, I spoke for whatever I did, 15 minutes or something on stage, and it was the aftermath that was the most beautiful, right? It was the people, I don't know who they are, from all corners of the world, right? Coming up and saying, oh, Angela, I love this one point, or, oh, Angela, I'm going to take that thought forward and I'm going to chat with my colleagues back at, my company. That was the real gift for me, right? Being able to say, wow, that was, and then them sharing with me their challenges and what's on their mind, so that we can create that community of possibilities, right? And I think there's no doubt in my mind that science and technology and willfulness and purpose are amazing tools, right? And so we've got to take everybody on that journey to say, let's make sure that these tools are really working in our favor on all aspects that we need. We need better medicines. We need better environmental controls. We need more sustainable solutions. We need, solutions to pandemics and pest problems around the world. I mean, there's a lot of things that I fundamentally believe that smart, focused, curious people are going to do amazing things.
Absolutely. So, Angela, in the intro to the show, I mentioned that in addition to leading this major consumer goods R&D organization, you also have responsibilities for things going on at the Reckitt Global Hygiene Institute, and clearly, the last couple of years have amplified that. On one hand, we need to, if we're clean and so forth, we help maintain health, we prevent disease and so forth, and that's all great. At the same time, and I did a show with last year with some folks from the Toilet Board Coalition. We're in a world nowadays where we have hundreds of millions, if not billions of people out there. They don't have toilets. They don't have running water. As you said, there's a lot of problems still. Talk a little bit about what's happening at the Reckitt Global Hygiene Institute and some of the things. I know it's sort of a broad swath of investigation and R&D you're doing there. And then if you could also mention what is happening. I know there's the Global Hygiene Summit that's coming up that you're involved in. Say a few words about that as well in Singapore.
Yeah, thanks for that. So the RGHI, the Reckitt Global Hygiene Institute, is actually a foundation, so a nonprofit foundation that Reckitt founded back in 2020 with the purpose of bringing more scientific insights and learnings to the fundamental premise that hygiene is the foundation of health. And with that, we set up a proper board. So it's very independent. It makes sure that it's running really with the sole intention of delivering against that ambition, not for the company, but for the world. And so it is something I oversee, but it's not something that I run, right? Because we wanted to have that objectivity. We want it to be a place that convenes everybody. And so with that, we actually, from a Reckitt perspective, have really enabled RGHI to set its path, to set its mission, to engage in the conversations that it thinks it's most important. And, I'm really pleased that so far, what I've seen RGHI do is we've launched fellowships, grants. They've made sure that they're bringing in scientific experts and panels to make sure that the best possible places are getting funding to move the really important science forward. And so it really is with that expectation that all boats will rise, right? So like when that science comes, everybody will have opportunity to utilize it. Everybody will get the opportunity to learn from, this idea that hygiene is a foundation of health. And so, yeah, I think we're very proud of what it's been able to accomplish in its short time. You're right, having been started during a massive pandemic has been a bit of fuel, right? Never before had this topic been so not only prevalent, but actually gaining the traction in big conversations, right? We cannot ignore this. We collectively as society cannot ignore, to your point, running water, toilet sanitation, making sure that what we call those vectors of infection, right? We got to break the chain of infection. You have to have interventions, right, that really allow people to lead healthier lives because they have better hygiene practices. And so from a company perspective, at Reckitt, we obviously have lots of solutions and research happening there. And then as RGHI, our private, our foundation that we founded, being able to really take that even further into places where others can really benefit from it as well. And I think the last comment that you questioned was around the summit. And so we are excited about the summit next year. I think we're moving around dates a little bit, Iris. So we might have a slight change in scheduling there, but it's mainly to make sure that the full complement of the constituency can come and it can be as impactful and positive as it can be. So definitely a place to watch in terms of that convening the conversations to really help continue to move the science forward.
Excellent, really excellent. So Angela, I in this house, aside from my wife, I have 3 kids. Well, one's away at college, and he's my oldest son. He's into biology and cognitive neuroscience and all that stuff. My middle son, physics. My daughter, however, I think you have a chemist on your hands. Talk a little bit about the fabulous and fun world of chemistry, why you wrote it, and then I think you wrote it with your sister, right? And she's an educational expert as well. Talk about what that was like collaborating with your family on putting this book out there.
Oh my gosh, super fun. And I would say, definitely one of those things like a passion project, right? Yeah. So it was a handful of years ago, and my sister and I, so she's a child development specialist, and so she really understands, the cognitive development of children. And we were just having this conversation about, my own experience as being a woman in the sciences and often being the sole woman, in the particular discussions. And there was a lot of research coming out like in the 2000s around that boys and girls just learn differently, right? The interests are different. And so ensuring that curricula was leaning into the differences was the whole sort of starting point for us, because we thought, well, gosh, I think chemistry is amazing, right? I can't possibly imagine who wouldn't think it's interesting, but it's true. Not everybody finds it so interesting. But I thought, I wonder if we spoke to girls in a way that was potentially more interesting to them. I mean, I was an 8-year-old girl one day. My sister was an 8-year-old girl one day, right? And so what we ultimately conceived of, which is the book, is really just a very simple couple of short experiments that brings chemistry to life with topics that are just, generally speaking, more interesting to girls. So making rock candy, understanding how nail polish works, understanding how shampoo works. And it's not about saying that boys don't think those things are interesting either, but it's about the way in which you show it. It's about the color palette. It's about the language that you use. It's just about building more accessible. So we want to have all of these different types of vehicles to effectively just get at the most children that we can, right? In terms of gaining, that spark of interest, if you will. And so my sister and I wrote it with that expressed hope, right? That we would just maybe inspire one, maybe two, right? To just ask a few more questions and be a little bit more curious in that thing, because it wasn't about the rocket blowing up and it wasn't about cars going so fast. It was just something that was different from a topical perspective that brings to life those principles around chemistry. And, it's been now many years that it's been available. And, here and there I get the little note back that says, oh, I got this for my young girl and it's been so fun and we do it together. And I think that was the whole point. That was the whole point, right? Yep. So I feel very grateful that my sister and I were able to do it together as well.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Angela, one thing I wanted to, I neglected to mention that, at the beginning of the show that, in addition to this amazing career journey you've been on, both in research and obviously now in sort of business development executive roles, that you also segued at one little point early on, and you were a small private business owner working in the injection molding space. I think that's kind of rare, because normally we think about sort of the entrepreneur and then the corporate folks over here. You did a little of both. And I wonder if you could just say a few words about what that time as an independent entrepreneur also taught you that you were now able to leverage in this new role, or in this current role.
Yeah. I loved being a small business owner. So we had this very small plastics injection outfit, and it was my husband and I that had this thing together. And the first thing I learned was you got to be able to do everything. You just do. So I was head of, quality control and head of the, troubleshooting. And I was on top of the machine and covered in hydraulic oil and, making sure that raw materials were coming in the front and that finished product was going out the back, and somebody had to sell them, right? I had to make sure we had made plastic bottle caps. So, engaging in the sales and marketing aspect of it, right? So that idea that an integrated business, even though we were small, you really have to know enough about all the different disciplines to make sure, not necessarily that you have to do them all, but you have to respect them all, right? And even to this day, right? And my accountability is R&D. But to enable this company to run, I have to respect all the different elements that have to happen, around me and with me. And that spirit of resilience, tenacity, right? I mean, there's nothing like being 2 a.m. and the machine's down and there's, back orders happening. And I don't know if the raw material shipment's going to come in at 6 a.m. I hope it does, right? That spirit of, we're going to get it done. We can do this. It's hard. So I loved it. I loved the education of it. I loved the in the moment of it even. So I looked at that time very, very fondly. It just wasn't going to be like my whole future, right? So there was a time period for that particular endeavor. And yeah, so a very, very fond time for me.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I appreciate sharing that. And I think, because, I think that's it's just an important piece that, for those that do experience that, as you were saying, everything from running the machines to making the coffee in the morning, that's something that, not a lot of people experience. And it, I think it just, shows sort of as you said, the degree of your sort of resilience across these different disciplines. So that's quite, once again, I appreciate you sharing that piece of your journey. It's anything else hot coming up for, well, getting near the end of the year now, but as we enter 2023, obviously got the Hygiene Summit coming up, but other things that are going to be happening that you can tell us about, other conferences, talks you're going to be giving, places that we can listen to you, maybe meet you, anything else that I might have missed, please take the floor.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, the schedule is still under construction,
Okay.
Ira. So maybe next time we talk, I can tell you some places where we plan to be. But I can promise you this: I think 2023 is going to be an amazing year. So having come to this company during a pandemic, and being in my home office just like everybody else was, right, for 2 years was a bit of a bummer, right? We got a lot accomplished. We did a lot, but in 2022, and I would say even the back half of 2022, I've spent so much more time out in the field, engaging in our markets, engaging in our, our own laboratories. Like you mentioned, One Young World, and there'll be something else coming up soon, right? Being able to just be out there has been so amazing. And so I'm super excited about 2023 because I think that we have a lot to offer. We have a lot to say. We have a lot to learn, right? Mm-hmm. So we will definitely be, more part of the ongoing conversations and all the things that are important to the company and to myself. So, a big thing that I like to talk about when I go around is the power of the science inside everything. Mm-hmm. And so that's a sort of a premise that I like to bring to these conversations, but more broadly around the table is what's next? What's the science inside going to bring us next? We're going to launch new products next year. We're going to launch new claims next year. All of that's happening because of the power of the science inside, alongside great collaboration with all of our colleagues.
Yeah, no, it's going to be an exciting coming year, and I enjoy listening to your passion for this, and I continue to follow both you, the organization, obviously the Hygiene Institute. It's really a fascinating portfolio, and really wishing you the best with it. Again, for everybody that is going to be listening to this particular episode across the various podcast networks, or again watching on our YouTube channel. Again, you've been listening to Dr. Angela Neff, Chief Research and Development Officer, Reckitt Benckiser Group. Also check out the Reckitt Global Hygiene Institute. Pick up a copy of her book, The Fabulous and Fun World of Chemistry, a science book for girls by girls. Angela, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to come talk to us for a little while about all these topics. Obviously, thank you for everything that you do. And as we say on our show, thanks for helping to create a better tomorrow through what you're doing. It's really a very inspiring story.
Thank you. Much appreciated.